Savvy Central Radio, drawing out the best from our guests, with host Christina Nichman.
Savvy Central Radio is home to over 100,000 listeners per month globally and runs in syndication on 7 AM/FM platforms, including iHeartRadio and 6 podcasting platforms. To find out about our paid sponsorship opportunities or to become a guest and find out how we can help you get your message out to the world, call 718-713-2289 or email at savvycentralradio@gmail.com. Hello everyone, and welcome to Savvy Central Radio. This is your host, Christina Nichman. Each week on Savvy, we host successful individuals and business owners, inviting them to share their dreams, stories, wisdom, and lessons learned in their field of business. Today we're joined by Lionel of Lionel Media. Lionel is a Emmy Award-winning news decoder, trial lawyer, and legal analyst. His podcasts are available at lionelmedia.com. His Twitter handle is @LionelMedia. Lionel, I'm so excited to have you back for our State of the Nation month on Savvy Central Radio. And there's a lot of stuff going on in this nation that needs some resolution. And we'd love to have you to come out today and talk about some of the things I've seen that's really concerning me and alarming me. And being a trial lawyer, I thought we could start with what I saw in the news with Scalia. Supreme Court Justice proclaimed the Constitution is dead, dead, dead. What is your take on that?
I don't care. I really don't care what he has to say.
Yeah.
I think he is one of the biggest cons that has ever been purported as an arbiter. Look, the bottom line is this. He is a darling of the right. And I don't like to use terms left and right, but the Federalist Societies and Scalia would have you believe that he applies a type of a doctrine, a way of looking at the Constitution. And no matter what the case, no matter what the area, he will apply this doctrine, whether it's called originalism or strict construction or whatever. He can call it Sesame Street or any name. It doesn't matter. He will apply that which he wants to apply and will give you a post hoc reason for it. If he likes the legislation, let's say there was legislation that would ban gay marriage, or I'm just assuming. Mm-hmm. He would then say, well, I'm going to do nothing to strike down the legislation because, after all, there is no constitutional right per se. Mm-hmm. The drafters of the Constitution, our forebears, were silent as to this, so I'm not going to involve myself and, quote, legislate from the bench or be a judicial activist. I'm going to allow this legislation, which I happen to like, but I will give you the reason for it as being interpreted through my unique vision. Balderdash. Now, let's assume there was something he did not like, which mandated that, I don't know, people marry people of the same gender, or whatever, something that even we could agree is ridiculous. Then he'll say, now I'm going to apply the Constitution because this is in violation of the 14th Amendment, the 5th Amendment, what have you. So what you do is, if you like it, the legislation, the issue, you don't touch it. If you don't like it, you change it. And you give people an excuse that tries or attempts to apply some type of juridical or judicial way of thinking as the reason for it. And it's poppycock.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And this brings me to something that I've thought about recently, and I have heard is coming up in the House, brought to the House again to look at, and that is the Patriot Act.
Yeah.
You know, when I heard about that coming into being, I thought, well, that kind of negates a lot of what I'm seeing in the Constitution, unless I'm misinterpreting it.
Well, let's talk about the Constitution, first of all, just for a second. When people talk about the Constitution, they really mean the Bill of Rights for the most part. They really don't. I mean, the Constitution, Article 1, Article 2, how laws are passed. I don't think people really are speaking of that per se. But it's the Bill of Rights. The First Amendment, the Second Amendment. The Third Amendment, which is oftentimes forgotten, that's the law which prohibits soldiers from being quartered against your will at your home, which is kind of a unique. And if martial law or Jade Helm or one of these fancy alleged right-wing conspiracies comes to bear, you're going to be hearing more about that. So it's really the Bill of Rights that we talk about, so that we... But the Constitution in general is silent as to a lot of things. There's nothing in there about the Air Force. There's nothing in there about the number of Supreme Court justices. There's not about voting. It's thorough, but not as plenary or full as you might think. So when I would say the Constitution is not dead, but it doesn't affect everything. You have no right to a plasma flat screen TV, but the reason why you can have one and the government can prohibit it is not the Constitution per se, but just the fact that, well, you just can have it. There's no there's no particular enumeration of a right. So you really don't need the Constitution as much as you'd think. So it's not that it's not dead. It's just not, look, if the state of New York decides to allow first cousins or brothers and sisters to marry, they could. There's nothing in the Constitution that would prevent it. There's nothing that prevents. So when people use same-sex marriage as an excuse, if they say, for example, well, this is going to be a slippery slope. Next, you could marry a tree. If the state of New York, New Jersey, or Texas, or wherever wanted to allow you, they could do it anyway. There's nothing in there if the state of, what state are you in?
New York.
You know, okay, good. So that people around the world know this. If they decide to allow you to drive 200 miles an hour, there's nothing in the Constitution to prevent that. The state can allow you to do all kinds of stuff, even prohibit to a certain extent. So the Constitution is not dead, but it may not be as necessary as you might think. It's not the end all of your right.
So basically, was it really put into effect basically to keep the government in check, or because the states make their own legislation? So what I think you're saying here is the Constitution was put into effect and we have the amendments, but really it's each state that legislates for itself.
Yeah, to an extent. I mean, for example, let me just ask you this. You're aware of the First Amendment, you being a noted blogger and audio. Okay, now, do you have a freedom of speech? Yes or no?
Yes.
Really? Anything? You can say anything you want? What if you libel somebody? What if you slander somebody?
Well, I think in the case of violence, it could be there can be something put against you, because if you put a threat of violence against someone, I don't think that is. So
you don't have so free speech doesn't, so there are limitations. What about libel? What about saying something that's a lie against somebody? And libel, of course, is a statement of fact, which is not true, which causes damages. So, of course, now you have freedom of religion, right?
Yes.
Under the First Amendment, because the First Amendment is really the most interesting, because there's press, there's speech, religion, assembly. Okay, so you can snort heroin pursuant to your religion?
No.
And that would be the free. Well, wait a minute. There's the free exercise clause of the First Amendment, and then there's the Establishment Clause. The Establishment Clause says that the government cannot establish a religion, and Congress shall not pass a law that affects your free exercise. But what if snorting heroin is part of yours, or animal sacrifice, or handling snakes? So we obviously know that's not true. So what exactly is this freedom? I can't. Can you believe anything? Yeah, in your head. Don't act on it. Just think it. Is that what expression of religion is? We don't know. They never said. So we wait until the Supreme Court evolves a series of cases to say, well, what did it mean when it said freedom of speech, freedom of religion? Don't know. And unless it comes up, unless the particular case comes before the Supreme Court, who knows? We're not even sure what natural-born citizen means. After all of the debate with Obama, whether he was born in this country or not, We're not really sure. It's not clear. So let me go back to what we said originally. Constitution is not dead, but it's not as limpid or pellucid or clear as one might think.
So I know many might not even be aware of all the different amendments, like the right to bear arms, or freedom of speech in the First Amendment, and just the third one, which you mentioned, which is interesting, which you never hear, which is placed restrictions on quartering of soldiers in a private home.
Yeah.
Now people will listen to this and go like, so what relevance does the Constitution have? And if it were to be eliminated, would it really change our existence in the United States at all?
Well, that's a great question. If you were right now, I guarantee you, if there was a pounding on the door, and somebody were to grab your recording equipment and say, "All right, Christina, enough," under the Patriot Act, under the NDAA, under the Espionage, the Alien and Sedition Act, whatever it is, we're shutting you down. Mm-hmm. Now, you can say, I'm sorry, I have the First Amendment. Tell that to Julian Assange or Snowden or Chelsea Manning or Ellsberg or anybody else for that matter. They always found a way around it. They say, well, this doesn't count because there's national security. Mm-hmm. Here's what I have always found interesting. The Fifth Amendment. You have the right not to give testimony against yourself, correct?
Yes. So that does that mean that when you're being, hauled off to prison or whatever, you have the right to not libel yourself by talking, and you have the right to remain silent?
Right. One would think, right?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Now, let's assume you're driving home, and a police officer believes that you are under the influence of alcohol. Mm. And the police officer says, now, Christina, I don't want you to say anything. I don't really want. But what I want is your breath. I want to put this in my machine, this breathalyzer, and see what it reads. Now, you keep your mouth shut. Don't say anything other than to open your mouth and blow in the machine. Or I want your blood to look for what the amount of alcohol in your system now is. And you say, wait a minute. This law is really not based upon, it is against the law to drive with above a 0.08% blood alcohol level of grams or milligrams of ethyl alcohol per 100 deciliters of blood. It's a unit of something. That's the crime. You're asking me to hand over to you the evidence of my crime. Mm-hmm. And if I don't, I lose my license? Wait a minute. You're penalizing me for not giving testimony against myself. Mm-hmm. How does it do that? Everybody knows that law is legal. Everybody knows that you lose your license. Mm-hmm. But if I have the right to remain silent, why are you penalizing me? Why don't you say, well, Christina obviously elected not to give testimony against herself, so the idea is, sure, you can keep quiet, but we're not going to penalize you for it. We can say, fine, Christina, you don't tell us who gave you those WikiLeaks documents. We're just going to put you in prison for the rest of your life. But don't worry, you don't have to tell us. We'll just take your freedom away. So how does that work?
It's like a double standard. And I've been hearing a lot of people talking about that when they're driving around, and now and we're getting to that soon, about the tension and the polarity between the citizens and the police all over the nation. And people are like, okay, don't open your window, just slip out a plastic bag outside the window so the cops can look at it. And it's just becoming outrageous.
Well, that was that lawyer in Florida, and I kind of like his gumption, so to speak. But let me give you an idea. Let me tell you how the Supreme Court handled that case. And I was a prosecutor, and we handled that case involving not only breathalyzers, but field sobriety tests, touching your nose, walking a line, doing a host of things that the police will make you do. And well, the Supreme Court took the case up in 1972, I think, and it was called Schmerber against California. That was the case. And the Supreme Court said, and you're going to love this, the Fifth Amendment does provide that you have the right to not give testimony against yourself. However, blood and breath and bodily fluids and hair and appearing in a lineup and fingerprinting and, mug shots, that's non-testimonial. Ta-da! It just said, that doesn't count. Next. So you're thinking, that's it? Mm-hmm. That's it. That's our answer. It's not testimonial. It's okay to use it. No big deal. So it just says, That's it? That's it. Now, and it has not been addressed since, whether it's that, abortion, if the Supreme Court, Obamacare, Justice Roberts said, well, it's a tax, and taxes are okay. Next. What? A tax? One of the craziest decisions. I happen to believe in a woman's right to have an abortion if she, within reason, obviously, and reproductive rights. But Roe against Wade is one of the worst cases ever. If they created a thing called privacy. Privacy? What does that mean? I don't know. We just call it privacy. Next. And they just make it up.
As they go along.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. It's a little scary, though, because you're wondering where the future of the United States is going. And really, what rights really do citizens really have if at any time the government can say, well, it's national security, we need to take all of your privacy away, whatever that might be. And that already is happening with cameras on every corner and such. And so really, what can citizens do on their part to kind of, or is there anything you can do with the going trend?
Yes, you have to understand what laws and what rights are being taken away. Yes, absolutely. Let's take, for example, remember in Boston, during the Boston Marathon bombing, they were looking for the Tsarnaev brothers. 2 people they were looking for. They shut Boston down. It was lockup. It was a beta test for martial law. They shut Amtrak down from Boston to New York. They shut it down. You could not leave. There were troops and military-like and police, I guess, tanks driving up and down the streets, telling people, go into your house. You cannot come out. This is martial law. And what's so interesting, at the end of this, when they finally said, okay, we found him, you can come out of your house, people clapped. They clapped. Their captors up and said, wait a minute. Now, I don't know if you recall, I'm sure you do, 9/11, nobody shut down New York. Can you imagine that?
Yeah. Yeah, in fact, everyone gloomily went home and was distraught, but there was no shutdown. But interestingly, 2 years ago, a friend of mine who lives in West Virginia told me about an event that did not make it onto the news, made it onto YouTube briefly. West Virginia had declared martial law in 5 of its counties and was not put on any of the traditional media. And my friend said, I felt like I was living in the Afghanistan or something. I was like, I came out of my door and there were machine gun and military folks outside my door saying, get the heck back in your house. And they gave no indication about why we were being locked in our house. And the governor of West Virginia posted on YouTube saying, well, they're doing some testing and I'm not agreeing with this, but I want you guys to know, the citizens of West Virginia, what's going on.
Oh my God.
So basically, that was yet another beta test for martial law. It's nuts.
And when you have people who say, oh, well, next. Oh, well.
And you know what it is? I think people are thinking, well, they're protecting us. There is a possible threat out there. There's the idea of terrorism that we've been hearing all over the place. And so these people are protecting our rights. But when does it become too far? And are they really protecting a right, or is it a perceived threat that was made up to keep us contained and controlled?
There was a wonderful BBC special years ago called The Power of Nightmares, and I commend it to you, and it's wonderful. And what's really important is to always make people afraid. And I know we were going to talk about the idea of when do the military and the police, when do the police in particular, when do they get out of control? What has happened? And there's something which I also want to commend to you and your listeners and followers as well, and that's the Posse Comitatus Act of 1878, I believe. And what it is, it creates a firewall between the military and law enforcement. The military can never be brought in to act as law enforcement. You cannot have the 82nd Airborne or the 1st Marine Division come in to arrest people for speeding. Consequently, we don't normally have the police go to Iraq to engage in war. The two are, and it was because of our founding fathers and their distrust of a standing military. They said, well, go for a navy. Because this was the time of pirates in the Barbary Coast, and they thought, oh, okay, we'll do a navy, but that's it, because they knew that oftentimes a standing army is the tool of a rogue government. To have a standing army is basically empowering the king's own thug force to turn against citizens. If Thomas Jefferson or James Madison or Washington saw what we live in today, when you also have the mainstream media fetishizing the military, support your troops, having them embedded, having this, old glory and God bless America and support our troops, and which is fine, but that's a very dangerous thing, because we're having people now suggest that, and I guarantee you, if the 82nd Airborne moved in to Brooklyn to quell some type of riot, nobody would even know that that's illegal. And what's also interesting to note is, look how the police today look like the military.
Yes, absolutely. And they act militarized. In fact, and when I grew up, the police were never shoot to kill. It was kind of like, let's disengage this problem by talking it out or seeing what the issue is. Now it's like shoot first and talk later. Right.
And you also have a sheeple type of country that responds back with, well, had they followed the orders of the police, had they listened to what this officer said, this wouldn't have happened. Wait a minute. These are trained professionals, trained to deal with the mentally ill, the obstinate, the angry, the criminal, the bad. Why do they even have training? Why not just have target practice and tell people, don't worry about training, just shoot them. Anybody who give them a warning shot, and that's about it.
Yeah, or not, in that case, right now it doesn't even seem that we're getting that. And I've seen videos online where there was this Russian police officer who was being attacked. This guy ran at him with a shovel or some sort. He disengaged him and got him on the floor in 2 seconds without using any weaponry other than his hands. And that's hand-to-hand combat. Right. Like, do they not teach that at all, police officers?
No. And the allegedly big bad Russians, that we have also been told and taught because of this Cold War rhetoric that they're, bad and evil people. Something happened called the 1033 program, which also, this is part of the NDAA, which provided that individual civilian military, I was a Freudian slip there, but individual civilian law enforcement were able to receive military equipment and the like that wasn't used anymore. And it really posed a very serious question. Why would you have, in fact, in MRAP, this huge $700, almost $1 million equipment, this big all-terrain vehicle that is bomb-resistant to handle IEDs in Fallujah, it actually tears up city streets because it's so big and cumbersome. But if you're the Des Moines PD and you get this real cool bit of firepower, and you take a 20-year-old or a young recruit and you give them Kevlar and a helmet and RoboCop pants and look at this chest protectors and these knee protectors, and you almost look like a RoboCop. And then you can wear glasses. We will tint the glass of the helmet so you don't have to make eye contact. We will treat the civilians like enemy. There's a new documentary that's out now called the Stanford Prison Experiment. And I want everybody to look at this. It was in 1970, and it shows what happens when you take regular people, you put them in the position of authority, and how quickly they change. There was also it was an offshoot of the Milgram experiment in 1960.
I remember the Milgram experiment. Yes.
This was the shocking of individuals. People would be asked to participate in a scientific exercise. That actually was not true, but participants believed that they were shocking fellow citizens who were getting answers incorrect. And they were shocking people to the point of putting them what they thought was in a coma. So when you take average people, or less than average, you create a military feel to law enforcement. When Sheriff Andy and Andy Taylor, and this is in the 60s of, Adam 12 and Joe Friday and Dragnet, and the officer who was the beat cop, the fellow that everybody knew, the police officer who would direct traffic in your hometown on Sunday when everybody went to church, the guy that you would recognize as Joe, and that's little Tommy's father. He's a policeman, and They were there to protect and serve, and they would bring kids back who ran away from home, and Norman Rockwell, and buying a runaway child an ice cream cone. The lovable, affable, father-like, paternalistic, nice policeman. That's gone. That image is gone.
And it's scary, Lionel, because these are real people. These cops are real people. And I hear people on both sides like saying, these are people going out there risking their lives to protect and serve, as they say, and then citizens are hating them. But what both sides have to see is that the system is broken. People are operating within a broken system. And so any cop that joins the NYPD or any of the police departments around the United States, it's the systems that are broken. So what it is that the citizens and the police operating within the system have to say, this isn't working anymore.
Right.
I don't want to kill my fellow citizens because I'm ordered to, or they're the enemy and I'm the good guy. And I'm RoboCop. So, yeah.
Precisely. And also, most police officers are great. We all know that. There's about 1 million cops on the street right now. The number of engagements where citizens are shot or killed or beaten are so de minimis that it's not even worth. But here's something which is interesting. Most people don't smoke. Those cigarettes are a problem. I guarantee you that most people driving today do not get involved in any accident whatsoever on any given day. But nobody would ever say to get rid of seatbelts. But I guarantee you, most people have never gotten into an accident. But we have seatbelts, restraints. You don't want to get rid of a program, get rid of a protection, or look the other way just because very few people engage in it. I mean, so the idea that, yes, there are very few police officers who do anything bad, the number that do act outside of the realm of rational thought, that is a very big problem, and we can't look the other way.
Yeah. We can't allow that bad apples get away with the law, because if all citizens are held accountable for breaking a law, killing another citizen or such, we can't have that, only police officers, they're allowed to shoot people up and that's okay. They also have to be held to the law as well. Now, what I'm worried about really is the citizen and police uprise of polarization and citizen against citizen, law enforcement against the general public. Because I've gone up to a cop just the other day just to ask for directions, and he looked like he was going to jump out of his skin. Like, I'm a girl, I'm rather short, I don't look dangerous, I don't think, but everyone's on edge. How can we all begin to shift this situation?
It comes and it happens from the top down. And I'm telling you also we have to worry about. There is going to be a time very soon, if this is my personal opinion, if the mayor of New York City doesn't get his act together, we're going to start seeing a return to 70s level crime, street crime. We already have Central Park muggings. We have this hammer-wielding thug. We're having more and more crime. And our mayor is sending a message out that there's a new sheriff in town, and we're going to be a nicer, gentler. And even though we don't like rude police officers, especially those who responded so curtly to you when you merely asked for directions, we don't want to live in a situation where we don't have them. There are bad people out there who only respond to very serious threats of imminent and absolute and guaranteed reaction. And we need the police. Now, how we live concomitantly and simultaneously with police officers who are rough and tough and trained to react immediately, to really quell a situation if need be, and yet to respect rights, I think this can be done through paying more, better training, having a better a group of trainees. I want your listeners, your followers and your acolytes, to Google the case of a number of police departments, I don't know how you would phrase this, who turned enrollees down because their IQ tests were too high. Look at that. I think it was Connecticut was one. They basically turned people away because they were too smart. What does that tell you?
Wow, that's scary.
Yes. It's almost as though one would think that you're looking for a particular type of police officer.
Well, is it perhaps people you're looking for that are yes man, yes sir people who will not question orders no matter what the order is?
And I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. But now what Because I'm sure police officers out there, like that guy who jumped out of his boots, he's not happy with what's going on. He's nervous for his own life. What can we all do as citizens, including police around the nation? How can they start to change it?
Well, right. But it starts from the inherent, the academic superstructure of the system. Let me give you an analogy. Let's say when you started, I've been doing talk radio in a long time, right? And let's say you start off and you come to me and I say, all right, I'm going to train you. I'm going to show you. And I say, first of all, I want you to know something, Christina. These people are stupid. The people that you're talking to are stupid. They don't read. They don't know. You're smarter than they are. They're dumb and they're stupid. Really? Yes. And then you go to a convention of talk radio and you hear other people say, the listener, the talk radio listener, your audience, they're stupid, they're ill-informed, they're uneducated. And you hear this over and over again. And you go out and you begin your show. How do you think you're going to start? If that's what you've been told, if your training is that your listener is stupid, versus this. Now understand something. These are very bright people who respond to respect. And if you want to be very successful in communication arts, treat them with respect. Know that they're very educated and never talk down to them. Now imagine that version of a Christina. Imagine that. Well, that's the police. If you're told that you are a public servant, there are people who are waiting to take your job if you can't cut it. You better show people the respect because there are citizen complaint review boards. There are people who will watch you. They respect you. They want you to do a good job. But you understand, these are the taxpayers. They pay your salary. You are a peace officer and a public servant. Imagine that police department versus we're in charge, they're civilians, we're the boss.
Wow. So the message, I'm guessing, will not change from the inside unless citizens require it. And then, of course, all of us, all citizens, whether you are a police officer or not, educate ourselves.
Correct. Absolutely. And to tell mayors and those individuals who appoint police chiefs, if you don't do what we say, we're not electing you. You can kiss this job and your political aspirations goodbye. You listen to us. We're in charge, not you. And believe me, that makes a bigger impact.
Wow. Well, thank you so much, Lionel. This has been awesome having you back here.
It was my pleasure.
Thank you.
Let's do it again. Thank you so much.
You betcha. Savvy Central Radio is home to over 100,000 listeners per month globally and runs in syndication on 7 AM/FM platforms, including iHeartRadio and 6 podcasting platforms. To find out about our paid sponsorship opportunities or to become a guest and find out how we can help you get your message out to the world, call 718-713-2289 or email at savvycentralradio@gmail.com.